Stampers, welcome to the craft room. In today's video I'd like to show you how you can make your own embossed tissue tape to use on your cards and paper crafting projects. So let's get started. To begin with, we're going to need a piece of tissue paper, and I'm using a piece of craft colored tissue paper, and I like to work on a straight edge. So I'm actually going to hand tear this tissue paper about 4 inches down from the top. So I have a 4-inch wide strip, and this is probably about a couple feet or more long, maybe about 2 feet long or so. And this tissue paper has kind of a shinier side and a less shiny side. I'm going to be working on the less shiny side, or the matte side. I'm going to bring in this stamp set, the Established Elegance stamp set, and we're going to be using this particular flourish stamp. And we're also going to need our Versamark watermark stamp pad. And what we're going to do is take our embossing buddy and just gently rub our tissue paper, and I'm going to be stamping on this end of the tissue paper, so just gently rubbing that across. And we're going to be doing some stamping. Also, before I move any further, I'm going to grab my white embossing powder. I keep my white embossing powder in a little tub here, and I just want to make sure that it's handy as we're doing this project. So I'm going to set that over here. And we're going to begin our stamping, just inking up our stamp with the Versamark, and then coming ahead here to the edge and stamping onto our tissue paper. And as you continue to stamp, you're going to want to move your stamp around so that the pattern varies a little bit. So you'll see that I'm kind of turning my stamp and stamping and continuing on and turning it a little bit and stamping. And you want to stamp about halfway down, and that way you don't let the ink or give the ink time to dry. So I'm going to stop there for a second, and then we're going to bring our tissue paper over to our container of embossing powder. We're going to pick up a bunch of embossing powder in our spoon, and then I'm just going to sprinkle this over the stamped part of the tissue paper. And now you can see why I like doing this over a little tub, because then I can just tap it off and all of my excess powder goes into my tub. If you end up getting some little lines like this, not sure if you can see that, you can use your finger or you can use a paintbrush, a dry paintbrush, just to brush off those little edges if you get some of the ink on the little edges of your stamp. So just brushing that off a little bit. And now I'm going to continue my stamping until I have the entire length of my tissue paper covered. And if you only wanted a little piece of tape, you can just do a small portion. I like to go ahead and make a whole little mini roll for myself so that I can have it for future projects as well. So I'm going to keep stamping with my Versamark and applying my embossing powder, and when I'm done with that, I'll be right back. So I now have the entire length of my tissue paper stamped, and I have my white embossing powder on there, and we're just going to bring in our heat tool and we're going to heat emboss. And this doesn't take very long because your tissue paper is very thin, so you can see the change happening pretty quickly. So let's go ahead and get this heated. So now we have our entire length heat embossed and it's cooled down, and I'm going to bring in a roll of double stick tape. This happens to be 1/2-inch double stick tape, so it has a protective coating, and then when you go to peel this tape, one of the sticky sides is uncovered and this covering stays on the other sticky side. You can pick up double stick tape at an art store or a hobby shop or craft shop or even an office supply store. So now I'm going to take my tissue paper and I'm actually just going to turn it over so that the embossing is facing down. And I'm right-handed, so I'm going to start here on the far left. It's easier for me to work. And I'm just going to apply my tape along the edge. And if you're not right along the edge, so hopefully you can see here I'm not right along the edge, that's not a problem because we're going to come back and snip away that excess anyway. If you use a larger stamp for doing this project, that's fine too, because then you could come in and you'll have multiple widths of tape that you can create all at once. So it's up to you what different designs you want and how much of each design you want. And you can just see I'm pressing against the tissue paper as I'm applying this down. So I'm just going to turn this over, and I'm just going to take a scissor to cut the end here. And I just want to run my fingers along that just to make sure everything is stuck down well. And now I'm going to come in and take my scissors, and I'm just going to cut right along the edge here of this white backing of my adhesive. So that's going to give me a nice straight line or a straight piece of tape for using on my projects. And I'm just going to cut off that little excess here at the edge, and then I'm just going to turn my tape this way, and I'm going to also cut along this little edge to remove that little excess, since I wasn't right up against the edge of my tissue paper. I find that sometimes it's hard to line your tape up directly with the edge of the tissue paper, so it doesn't take long to just briefly snip this away, and that way you don't have to worry about being so perfect as you're applying your tape to the tissue paper. So I'm just going to finish trimming this and I'll be right back. So now I have a nice long piece of this embossed tissue tape. I actually like to take toilet paper rolls and cut them down and wrap the tape around the little toilet paper roll and just secure it with a little paper clip. You could probably use a twist tie or something else to secure it, and that way I can just come back here and take however much I want for a particular project, just like I would with a tape roll. And it just so happened that this roll, which was from some plastic wrap, was a little bit smaller in diameter than my toilet paper roll, so these slide on here really nicely and I can keep my whole collection in one place. When it comes time to actually use your tissue tape, all you're going to do is cut a piece off. And if you wanted to give it a banner end, I like to go ahead and just snip in from the edge and then snip in from each of the corners to create my little banner. My paper snips would be great for this too, but because this is adhesive, I like to not use my paper snips since I don't want to get any adhesive on them. Then all you need to do is peel your backing paper away. This at first can be a little bit challenging, but you'll get it. Just be persistent with that double-sided adhesive. And once you get that started, you're just going to peel that backing paper away from your little piece of tissue tape, and now you've got a really pretty piece to work with. I'm just going to grab a very vanilla card base that I cut down and just going to adhere my tissue tape right onto my very vanilla cardstock. I did this with a different design and made this really quick, adorable card. So not a lot of decorating required, really simple when you can just stick down these designs that you've made. I also used this same tape here on this little matchbook, and hopefully you can see this. What's really pretty about this is that your tissue tape is nice and thin, so whatever pattern you have underneath it will actually show through. So it's a little bit transparent, which is really pretty. So there you have it, a really fun way to combine your stamps with some embossing powder, tissue paper, and some double stick tape to create your own embossed tissue tape. I hope you've enjoyed this project, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon here in the craft room.